All right, in this second to last chapter in Rudolf Steiner's analysis of the Gospel of Luke, he focuses on this idea of love. Now, we saw previously in the previous video that the heart chakra, the anahata, which means the sound that is not made by any two things striking together, and that sound is, of course, om, a-u-m, a-u-m, waking, dreaming, deep dreamless sleep. That is the sound of the what Steiner would call the sound ether that can only be heard when the mind is tuned to very high frequencies. And so what he says is that the Buddha's task was to bring knowledge of compassion into the world and the wisdom of love, but not the actual activity of it. Christ's job was to bring in the knowledge of love so that it enters the heart and overflows. And as it overflows, it goes through the throat chakra, the Vishuddha chakra, and it gradually fills up the I, the ego, the sense of oneself. And here is the tradition of the sacred heart of Jesus, which is, of course, that anahata chakra, the chakra of compassion and love, whereby the lower three chakras that are merely common to animals, sexual reproduction, power and aggression, and so forth, torpor with the Muladhara chakra, which is the chakra that codes for materialism, by the way. Materialists only see the world in terms of that Muladhara chakra, whose element is earth. Here are the elements. The presiding god is Vayu, the wind god, with Rakini, his consort, and his Vahana is the antelope. The antelope is as swift as wind, and so the element here becomes air. And down below we see here again the wish fulfillment tree, which is the first intimations that one is able to hear the sound of Om, the sound that is not made by tension, by two things striking together. And so Christ's task then is to fill the ego, to overfill it, to overflow it. And in doing so then, it will activate the Vishuddha chakra. This is the voice chakra, the 16-petaled voice chakra, so that words of love will come forth. And it creates a kind of what the philosopher of the Mukaddima, Ibn Khaldun, called asabia, which is a kind of mystical, metaphysical glue that binds people together, only he's thinking in terms of binding the Bedouin tribes together. But Steiner is talking about the Christ event coming down, getting that heart chakra to awaken and vibrate so that it overflows to the point where it activates the throat chakra, which is the sound of the logos that speaks words of love. And so eventually over time, this is a gradual process. It doesn't happen overnight. Eventually over time, the Christ impulse will permeate the ego, whereas the Buddha and Indian civilization generally did not develop the sense of the ego. Compassion, yes. A love for other beings, yes, but not the sense of ego. And so Christ's task is to fill the cup of the ego to overflowing with love so that it will connect human beings together at a higher vibratory frequency, a frequency that cannot be heard with the ears, but has to be heard with the middle eye, the Agya chakra. This is the chakra in the middle that only wants to hear the sound of the gods and the word that animates the logos, all of creation, and will bring human beings together and overfill them with love. So Steiner's paradigm here is a very optimistic one, and he talks about 3,000 years from now. What will happen then is that the Buddha, when the Buddha incarnated, and then when he went back to the other side, he passed the diadem over to the future Buddha Maitreya. And so this is a picture of the future Buddha Maitreya. He will be the next Buddha to come in 3,000 years, sort of like the Saoshyant, who will come in Zoroastrian religion at the end of time, or the second coming of Christ himself. Or in Hinduism, Kalki, the one who will come at the end of time. There's always these eschatological ideas of these beings who will come at the end of time to settle all the karmic debts. And the Maitreya Buddha, when he comes, will unite human beings together, especially the ones whose egos are perfused and suffused with love, because their heart chakras have been activated And love and compassion becomes their primary motivations rather than aggression, rather than the sex drive, rather than fighting and competing with all these animal instincts. So that's the upshot of this chapter is Steiner's meditation on love. And then he sees the Gospel of Luke as especially being a gospel that focuses on the loving, warm aspect of Christ, because this is the Nathan Christ child who, as we saw in previous chapters, was the one who wasn't all that bright at first, but the Buddha's astral body became entwined with his astral body, and at the age of 12, the Solomonic Jesus, the Zarathustra ego that was in the Solomonic Jesus, transmigrated to him. And then at 12, he's teaching in the temple. So this is a very complex, highly evolved being that contains elements of the Buddha's astral body entwined with his astral body, Zarathustra's ego. We also saw that part of the ego of Adam was involved in his etheric body. That also gets displaced. And eventually, at the age of 30, the Zarathustra ego vacates so that the Christ being can come down from the sun to take up residence in this being for 3 years and make dynamic the power of love and make it resonate through human beings as a higher vibrational frequency that unites human beings. It's a very beautiful, optimistic vision. It reminds me a bit of Taylor Desjardins' vision of the omega points. And so this is sort of a kind of an eschatological chapter here in Steiner's analysis of the Gospel of Luke.